We moved to Burgundy, to a place called Champeau. He was more or less like a dowry from my grandfather to my mother. And this was a country place. Don't remember ever buying fruit or vegetables during my growing years. Everything was from the garden or the meat from the farm. We happened to be, my older sister and I, at my grandparents' for vacation. We went to Mass one day, and I can still remember that like it was yesterday. The priest came out before his homily, and that's when he made the announcement that England had declared war. And the one thing I can still remember, the bells were ringing. And it's a very funny, dark sound. We call it the glas in French. I don't know what you call it in English, so skip it. But it's an awful dull sound. And those bells kept ringing out, and I can still hear them. And everybody left. But my sister and I couldn't go back, because all the train and all the service were reserved for the army and the volunteer and the people who were going to join in the military. And finally, we were allowed to take the plane when most of the soldiers were gone, and we got back to our place, to my parents' place. There was definitely a change in life. It changed right there and then, the day there was the declaration of the war. For one thing, you know, we were very patriotic people anyway, and you gotta remember, my family were both army people, military. My grandfather had done the First World War. He got wounded 4 times. My father had lost his 2 brothers in 1914. There was a war. And I remember going to church one time with my mother and my kids, brothers and sisters, walking. And all the time you see planes. And they were bombing all alongside, and we were walking. I was almost 16, so I was not a baby anymore. And I can still remember one day the German army soldiers were in the country, remember? But they took over, and then they were parading down on the street. And I never saw men, young men, as handsome as those German boys. All 18. As much I hated them, they were so handsome. And I can still, my mother was there, of course. She wasn't too happy about it. None of us were. And all she wanted to get the gun and shoot every one of them. I says, Mom, don't do it. Because if you do, we're gone. At that time, my father was a mayor of the town. And fortunately, he could speak German fluently, which saved my life more than once too. And what they wanted to do, they wanted to take over my parents' place, bring all that truck and whatever you want to call it, machine gun and everything, and use the place. But my father was kind of a diplomat, and he said, I got to get him out of that. At that time, France got divided into 2 parts. The occupied zone, where we were, and the free zone on the other side of that canal. That's where the underground started. To put the canal at night across so people could go from one side of the river to the other. A lot of the prisoners, now I saw them myself. They were in my kitchen and I served them coffee and cake. They were escaping being prisoners. And of course, my mother was behind the whole thing. I never saw anybody with guts like my mother. Never. My mother got so many people who could have lost their life if they hadn't been escaped. And she kept bringing them out. Years later, those people who had been saved by my mother were looking all over for her so they could thank her. They came and they watched for my mother and they looked for all the time just to thank her, because if it hadn't been for her, they had all been killed. And we moved that to the Alps, not far to Grenoble, which was a center of underground activity. A center, and I mean the center. You have no idea what went on there. We were hungry. I'm telling you, I have known hunger, and it's no fun. It's no fun. I remember with my sister when we were in the Alps. We had no heat, because you couldn't get it. And there was no wood, no coal, no nothing. This was really a tough time. And I remember with Monique and I going up in the woods and picking up dead branches and stuff so we could make ourselves a cup of coffee. I still remember that. I still remember one day, I went to Mass with my mother. It was a Sunday. And one of my best friends, who was a top guy on the underground, was staying at our house. My sister had been very sick and she had diphtheria. One morning the bell rang, 7 o'clock in the morning. He opened up the shutter and I was going to say, "You goddamn son of a gun, can't you give us a chance to get dressed?" And I saw 3 Gestapo men. 6'4", real bastard, that I used to see in Grenoble all the time, patrolling. So I went to my mother, she wasn't even up. I says, "Mom, it's not Paul. There's 3 Gestapo men." As tiny as she was, she started to practically tell the Gestapo off. She wanted to know who the commandant of the place was. They had no right to come like that, even though she knew they were Gestapo. And they came in. So I says, "My sister had diphtheria." Poof, they're gone. They took off like scared rabbits. I'm not kidding you. When I think back, I don't know how we did it. I really don't.
The joyful news of the liberation of Paris has gladdened the hearts of the people of Washington.
We didn't feel comfortable. We knew something was coming, but we didn't think it was a liberation. We just didn't. We thought it was impossible. And then, well, finally it came. There was bombing all around the city. Next thing you knew, General Leclerc troop came in. We couldn't believe it. We were having lunch with my sister, it was Monique. Mm-hmm. I said, "What's all the rumpus about?" She says, "Nothing to worry about." I says, "I don't know, we better go look." So we went. Here was the French troops. We almost fainted dead away. We didn't believe it. Because we've heard so many times they're going to come to free us after all those years. We still didn't believe it.
Je viens de fermer ma fenêtre, le brouillard qui tombe est glacé.
And then one day my mother came back. She said, "Okay, you can go out. The Americans are much better behaved than the French guys. You're safe." So I went with my friend and I felt like a jerk. Because I couldn't speak English, I spoke German. So I got there and said, "How the heck am I going to get out of this trouble?" There's somebody patting me on the shoulder. "How about a dance, baby?" I looked at him, I felt like, "You son of a... what the hell are you doing here?" But I looked at him. I said, "I don't speak English, I speak German." He said, "Don't worry, so do I." I could have killed him. And that's how I met my husband. Swearing I would never have anything to do with a Yankee boy. As my mother used to say, we have a French saying. In French it says, "You never say, 'Fountain, I shouldn't drink of your water,' because you never know what's going to happen." And that's how it started. Believe me, I was not the encouraging type at all. I was a cold potato. And many times my husband would say, he would say to me, he says, "You know, I don't think you have a heart. I think you got a stone." I says, "Good. Let's keep it that way. That's what I told him. So I found out I could get a visitor's visa as a student. But they wouldn't renew me my passport. I had to leave. And that's when he went to the army, and they were saying a GI club and all, and we get the permits and I could stay. And then once we get the permission to stay, then we decided on a date and everything.
Who was at your wedding?
Nobody. It was just Frank and Hazel, just close friend, my sister-in-law, and her brother, that's all. And I was the one who would dream of a big wedding. I could picture myself in Frank with the grand organ playing and a beautiful, here I am. And a regular dress, not even a white dress. Oh, here goes the dreams. But that's life. Well, we wanted to have a family right away, I really did, we both did, but it was tough, you know, find a place. Couldn't find an apartment. So we looked and looked, and we finally found one in Baldwin, Long Island, not far from Freeport, the end of Long Island. And we got this mortgage. We lived there for quite a while, till 1960, I think, something like that. 1962, we moved upstate, because we both wanted to live in the country. My father-in-law was a great lover of the country. He was very good to know that, and his dream was to live in the country.
Why do you live your life the way you do?
Because I believe. I believe in
what?
God.
Uh-huh.
I think I have faith.
Faith.
If I didn't have that, I'd shoot myself. I don't know how anybody who doesn't believe in God can live. It was tough. Yeah. So if you didn't have the love relationship between man and wife in those days, it couldn't work. You know, it was a way of life. And I think that's going to be a very hard thing to have my grandchildren understand it. I don't know if they do or not, but I figured they got to know about it. They're part of my blood, just as much as they are American, but they're French also. And there's a lot of story on my side of the family as far as war and army officers and the things they did from 1870, 1914, and 1940. And I said, why shouldn't they know about it?
So you've been here 6 years.
I guess so.
Yeah.
I don't even know. I thought I'd be dead now, I'll be very honest. I never thought I would last that long. No, I'm not kidding.
Who knows? So instead, you've got a wonderful apartment. You've got...
I got a garden.
You've got a garden.
Thanks to Jeffrey.
And, yeah.
And then at that time, I think Jeffrey never said anything to me. And Bruce says, you know, Jeffrey is making an apartment for you on top of the garage. I said, he got some nerve. So I hesitated. And then he showed me the size. I said, well, I guess so. And that's how it started. But I'll be very honest with you. It took me a long time to get used to this goddamn Colorado. With the weather and everything. Oh my gosh.
And
I like it now. I really like it.